Stinky Switch.
This is an incredible success story, I think, and really goes to show that though we're more in a realm of power in PlayStation 5 or on PlayStation 5 and certainly on Xbox and PC, there's a place for a mass market, accessible machine largely driven by one publisher and its games. And it's just a uniquely Nintendo thing. And Micah and I were talking about it, and I was like, well, part of me always feels like they should be worried about alienating their developer and publisher partners by having hardware that just needs new versions of games. Like Call of Duty will be coming, right? And we know that based on the agreements, should this deal go through. Just like the Wii era, they're going to have to build a whole different set of games for the machine. And I don't know that that's ideal, but then you look at it and you look at all the games they sell. And last year, 9 of the top 10 selling games on Switch were published by Nintendo. When Nintendo sells a game that sells conservatively 10, 20, 30 million units. So it's like they almost don't need anyone else. It's a very interesting machine. So yeah, what are your thoughts on this sales milestone?
Yeah, I think that they really were able to figure out something really special with the idea of the hybrid nature of the console. I think that that's one of the things that makes it so appealing to people. And it's funny too, we talk about on this show how if maybe Vita was orchestrated a little differently, or maybe it was a different time, that it could have done a lot better, because it's clear that handhelds are alive and well based on the success of both the Switch and the Steam Deck. But it's funny now in that I've seen I'm trying to remember the quote, but it was one of the executives at Nintendo said they were in uncharted territory for the Switch, just because it's really hard to tell what they're doing right now, because in some ways they're ordering more Switches. So they plan to sell a lot more of them. But at the same time, it kind of feels like they're slowing down in some ways as well, which I just wonder if they're going to try to have like a more powerful Switch that lives alongside the standard Switch in a year or two or something like that. But it's obvious that despite the fact that there's a power, or I guess what we consider a power issue, it's really not an issue for them. And in fact, for the most part, when people play Nintendo first-party games on Nintendo Switch, they aren't complaining that it's bad or it's like low frame rate or something like that. Now, to be clear, there are absolutely exceptions, and I think the number one glaring one is Pokemon. I think that the problems with that game go well beyond the Switch, but you see Nintendo really understand what the power of their console is, what it's good at and what it's not good at, and really build their games around the hardware. And that's made them extremely successful so far. And it's clear that they're going to have another really big hit with the new Breath of the Wild or the sequel to Breath of the Wild this coming May.
The Switch has now surpassed 122 million sales, making it the second best home console and the third best overall. Well, the Switch have enough momentum to surpass the DS with 154 million sales and the PS2 with 155 million. I think that 34 million units is doable, but I just don't think so. Like I just, who is left really to get that number? The one thing Switch is missing that PS2 had is at that time, fundamentally important multimedia functionality that Switch totally eschews and doesn't even mess with at all. And I'm not saying it needs that specifically. I'm just saying that's why so many PS2s were sold. I'm telling you, people weren't buying 150 million PS2s to play games. Games didn't sell anywhere near as many copies as they do now back in that era, even though there were a lot of PS2s. Games often sold 500,000, a million, 1.5, 2 million, but games getting into 10, 15, 20, that was exceedingly rare, like almost never. And so people were buying it for other reasons, and I don't think those other reasons exist with the Switch. So that's kind of my take. How do you feel about this? Do you think that it's in the rearview mirror of PS2, but I think PS2 is pretty secure.
Yeah, I think it all depends on how they handle what the Switch successor is. Is it something that replaces the Switch? Is it a new premium option that lives alongside the current Switch? It's really hard to say. But it is funny you were mentioning about people still buying Switches. Now that I think about it, I bought a Switch at launch and I bought a Switch OLED. So that's 2 right there. I bought one for Holly, a Switch Lite. So that was another one. And then just like 2 weeks ago, I bought a Switch Lite for my mom for her birthday. So I've bought four, and that's just me. And I imagine that Nintendo, and I think this is something that they said before, is that they're like, they don't necessarily see Switch as a you buy one device for your family. They want everyone in the family to have one. And that's how you do like multiplayer and different stuff like that. So that is a pretty big gap to get to, but it really just depends how long they see the life cycle. And like I said earlier, it sounds like they're ordering more, like a shocking amount from suppliers. They're not slowing down. So clearly they feel that it's going to continue to sell despite whatever other moves they have going on.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see the timeline of the new hardware and what it looks like and what it can do, because the reality with the Switch is that it was underpowered from the very, very beginning. So at this point, it really is aged. And I think that that does matter. It just fundamentally does matter. I don't know how a person can sit down and play Dead Space Remake, for instance, on PS5 and then look at even the Zelda game, the new Zelda game, which is beautiful, and not see the difference between those two games and how staggering it is and how far behind Switch is. Switch was underpowered even by PS4 standards. So as we accelerate forward to a potential PS5 Pro and all these things, and obviously PC gaming ratcheting things up and all the rest, Nintendo it's dangerous because it's very monocultural in that it's all about their own games. But if they don't deliver those games, and there have been eras where they haven't, like let's say some of the GameCube era, although I loved the GameCube, certainly the last half of the Wii, all of Wii U, where if they don't deliver, they have no partners that can help them in any real way. You always have Ubisoft around and all these, but it doesn't matter. Zombie U is not going to save your console. And so that's the thing I think about with them, where I think they realize they're on the clock requisite enough where they need to get something new out. But even when they get this something new out, I bet you it's not going to be impressive, because it inherently can't be. Unless it's going to be really expensive. It's going to be a handheld. So I don't know.
I think that you maybe are putting a little more importance on graphics and fidelity. For us and for people that listen to this podcast, yes, absolutely. But I'm willing to bet that I would say a majority of Switch owners don't care, really. And I think that it's become more apparent to people like us as we see the changeover from PS4 to PS5. Obviously, a big graphics and resolution update, but most importantly, I think that people care about frame rates now more than ever. So I think that that's where we're starting to really feel a lot of that Switch age. But I don't know. And the third party thing too is interesting in that I think that now more than ever, and I don't know, maybe the numbers don't support this theory, so people can feel free to let me know if this is off. But I think that the thing that backs up the Switch when there's no first party games are indie games and smaller games, because people like that ability to be able to take it anywhere. It's the go-to portable console right now. And of course there's Steam Deck, but I mean, nowhere near the numbers of Switch. So I wonder what that does for their business and how they choose to line things up. And obviously we've seen a huge indie emphasis from them. I mean, they had a bunch of stuff at their Nintendo Direct of indie games and more casual stuff, because clearly that's something that they're seeing a lot of sales from.
Yeah, we'll find out what the deal is with them. I'm very curious, because they have so much money right now, so much success, so much momentum, a lot of cross media potential and power happening with the Mario movie and theme parks, and very much a Disney like company.